Hey guys, Aaron here from Gough Custom. I've had a few requests over the last little while to do a video tour of the workshop, so I had some spare time today while I was waiting for glue to cure, so I thought I would show you guys around. The workshop's a little bit unusual because I've got wooden floors, and down this side of the workshop I've got a wall of mirrors. And the reason for that is that the shop used to be a pole dancing studio before I moved in. And I figured it wasn't really worth the hassle to move everything around just as I was moving in. It may change down the road, we'll see. So right now you're looking into the shop from actually outside the front door to give you the best possible view. And this front half of the shop is the dirty half of the shop. This is where I do all my grinding on steel and G10, any rough cutting work and whatnot all happens in this room. And you can see the two halves of the shop are separated by this big plastic wall. And then set into the wall over here, there are two big fans with very fine filters attached. Basically what they do is they run all the time and they keep a slight positive air pressure in the back room to make sure that all the dust stays in the front room here. It seems to work pretty well, and the back room actually stays very clean. So here you guys can see my grinding station. The belt grinder itself is a Beaumont Metalworks KMG grinder, and it's fitted with a 2 horsepower 3-phase motor that's run by a variable frequency drive here. This basically lets me control the speed of the grinder very easily with just the turn of a dial. So we can go from very, very slow speed all the way up to very, very fast. The fastest speeds I use for rough stock removal when I'm starting on a bevel or when I'm profiling a knife blade. And then you can bring the speed all the way down to use with fine finishing belts to avoid burning the steel. You can see here that I have a large work rest that I use in conjunction with my grinding jig to do all of the rough beveling. The grinding jig actually has one knob that allows you to adjust the angle of the grind very quickly. This setup has worked really well for me. I'm very pleased with it. And over here we have some tools that I use for rough sizing of stock. I use the chop saw for when I'm cutting down handle scales to approximately the right size before I go onto the grinder to do the finish profiling. And the bandsaw, the little one, I use mainly for rough shaping Kydex sheets. So here in the background you can see some of the wall of mirrors that I was talking about earlier. And then in front we have a metal cutting bandsaw that I use mainly for taking a long bar of steel and then cutting it into smaller sections so that I can mark out my knife blades and then shape them on the grinder. So you can see we've moved backwards into the main room, the clean room now. This is where I do all of my layout work and assembly and glue ups and everything else. I have all of my most commonly used tools set up here on pegboard, so they're really easy to find when I need them. And just various stuff like gloves and clamps and so on. Bench vise, and then underneath each of the benches in this room there are tool chests, which are very, very useful for organizing large amounts of smaller tools. In the tool chest underneath my main workbench I have a bunch of different stuff. I have a small surface plate and height gauge for marking center lines on knife blades and also for lapping things flat when I need to. I have all of my drill bits, drawer full of taps and dies, all of my files, and this is not how you're supposed to store files. I'm working on something better. And then right at the bottom I have my precision measuring tools. So I've got micrometer, dial test indicator, inside bore gauges, machinist squares, and so on. Next to the main workbench I have my tumbler, which I only just got recently. And this is basically a machine that shakes a bunch of ceramic media around mixed in with whatever workpieces you're working on. I had bought it intending to use it for stonewash finishes, but I actually don't really like the stonewash finishes that much on my knives. So instead it'll be used as a preparation step before some sort of coating like DLC or a nickel composite coating. I'm investigating a bunch of different things. So here you can see the tumbler running. As you can hear, it's quite a loud machine. The vibration makes all of the stones move around in this tumbling pattern. And when a workpiece is in there, it gets rubbed against them and you end up with a very nice matte non-directional finish over. And here next to the tumbler, I have my kiln. And this kiln is awesome. It's very small. It's one of the lower end models that these guys make, but it'll go up to 2100 degrees Fahrenheit. It'll take a while to get there, but it will do it. And it will hold temperatures really, really accurately. And this kiln is used to heat treat all of my knives. It's quite small inside, but I can fit about 10 knives in there if I'm careful. And then underneath at the front here, you can see the little rack that I use to hang the blades up so that they can cool in air. The steel that I use is mainly A2, which is an air quenching steel, which means that it doesn't need to be dipped into oil or water to cool it. Cooling it in air is actually fast enough to make it harden. And then next to the kiln, I have the milling machine and the lathe. I use these a fair bit, the milling machine much more so than the lathe. I also think the milling machine is a much nicer machine overall than this particular lathe, unfortunately. So underneath each of my benches, you may have noticed these blue Rubbermaid containers. And as funny as it sounds, I actually designed these benches around these containers because you end up with a lot of different stuff in the workshop that needs to be stored, but maybe it doesn't need to be as accessible as the stuff that ends up in a tool chest. There's a lot of different stuff stored in between them. The nice thing is too, if you ever need to move this stuff, it's already packed up and ready to go. You don't have to run around the shop trying to pack all this stuff up. You can just move it, which is very convenient. And then here on the far wall of the shop where the mirrors are, you can see I've got a large crappy table where I basically store anything that doesn't fit in any of the other areas. So I've got aluminum and steel rod stock stored here. I've got the arbor press that I use for doing the rivets on my Kydex sheaths. I've got the griddle that I use to heat up the Kydex for the sheaths. Epoxy, gloves. I have right here a batch of knives where the epoxy is curing. My Kydex press, various fluids like oil and vinegar and my propane torch, and just basically anything that doesn't belong anywhere else kind of ends up here. Then further again towards the back of the shop, I have 2 rolling tool chests, which I use for storage and as workbenches for stuff that doesn't need a super stable surface. So here I have all my sharpening gear, the Lansky, and also half a phone book for testing edges after sharpening. And then in this tool chest in particular, I have a bunch of raw materials along with stuff that doesn't get used very often, like fresh grinder belts, sanding supplies, all sorts of different stuff. Then right at the back of the shop, I have another 2 benches. This one's the bench that I use pretty much for finishing. So I have a board set up here which I can attach my knives to when I'm finishing them, and then various grits of sandpaper. And then another bench where I keep my laptop so that I can do design work or research or whatnot when I'm in the shop. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's the tour. This workshop is a bit of a slice of heaven for me personally. I've wanted a workshop like this for a really long time, and it's really awesome to have it now. The place is going to look a little bit different next year. I'm going to start moving into getting some CNC machinery into the shop so that I can be more efficient and productive, and hopefully get more knives out to customers so that people can actually use them. There's not much point making working knives if no one can buy them. So I hope you guys enjoyed the tour. If you guys have any questions about specific tools or anything in the shop, just let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them. Thanks for watching.